What's up, everybody? Jordan Stewart here from Vover. Thanks so much for tapping into the Vover original show. Just a reminder that if you want to drop your opinions about the episode or respond to the host and guests with your voice, go and download the Vover app wherever you get your apps. Vover, voice over everything. Enjoyed the show.
It's time to level up with Dr. Mondo.
What's good, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Level Up with Dr. Mondo. I am a licensed therapist, CEO and founder of Cheat Code and the Cheat Code Foundation, Dr. Armando Gonzalez, also known as Dr. Mondo. This is a podcast where we tell the often untold stories of mental health struggles by people that you look up to, people that you admire, people that you have watched level up in their lives, and you may have assumed in watching their ascension that they just had it all figured out, that they never had anything that they ever had to overcome when it comes to anxiety, self-doubt, insecurities, panic. This is a show that tells those untold stories so that we can normalize the telling of those stories amongst one another. I pray that as we talk today about what it is that we're going to share in today's episode, that this encourages you to have a conversation with a loved one, with a friend, or just even be out there on social media. Just let it all hang out, where we normalize the things that we're going through with our mental health. For far too long, the stigma has kept us from doing that. This is a podcast aimed at ending stigma around speaking about our mental health struggles, and also showing you that, if you want to level up in life and reach your ultimate goals and calling and purpose, you're going to have to prioritize your mental health. So I'm excited today to bring on a guest whose story is incredibly inspirational and it's incredibly on topic. His name is Manu Muasau. Manu is a former NFL football player, former collegiate football player. And as an athlete, he knows firsthand the stigma associated with talking about mental health struggles. In today's story, you will hear, though, that in some of his darkest hours, he found help and support through sharing his struggles with someone on the other side that could help him through that. And it's now changed the trajectory, not only of his life, but also his career and his calling and his profession, as he now enters the field that I'm in, to be a mental health therapist, coach, on his way to get his doctorate. So today we welcome Manu. Manu, thank you so much for being with us, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dr. Mondo. It's Manu Muasau. Just the twist that the tongue twisted a little bit.
And you know what? Did I say it wrong on the way in after all that practicing? One that we would need more than a short form podcast to unpack just all the amazing and inspiring moments that you've been through. But when you think about a singular event in your life that you went through that really challenged your mental health, that forced you to really face it head on in order to level up, I'm curious, what comes to mind?
Yeah, it's interesting that when I have opportunities to get a chance to share my journey or share my story, usually I'll give people just a synopsis of what I'm doing right now. And then I jump to the start and I basically tell the story of my life, like chronologically. But obviously, for the purposes of this podcast, the moment that stands out to me happened to have been the lowest point of my life. And it was also the most defining moment in my life. And it was when I was 13 years old. I still remember the day. It was September 17th, 2003. And during that time, I had my mother who struggled with debilitating and untreated and undiagnosed mental illness, was living in a homeless shelter, which I have come to find out it's more so the outdoor community. But she was a member of the homeless shelter due to her disorder and condition. I also had an oldest brother who was behind bars and was expected to serve a large bid in jail. And then also at the same time, my older brother and I were living in a group home for troubled teenage boys. And so while all this thing was going on, there was also really the last straw that sort of broke the camel's back, so to speak. And it was finding out the news that my father had passed away. and you can imagine what it was like for a 13-year-old to not really have any sense of what his life was about, to really be thrusted into this area of trying to figure out things for himself. And I remember that was the lowest point of my life, because we didn't realize that things could possibly get any worse. And so I remember the group home that my older brother and I were staying. There was a wooden bench right outside of the building, and we sat there for a couple of hours, and we wept and we poured our hearts towards each other. We comforted one another and just broke down crying. And I can recall feeling so many conflicted emotions. It was a deep sense of sadness. There was a lot of anger and resentment, but my brother was there to comfort me, and vice versa. And I, as I recall back to that moment, I think that was really the first time that I allowed myself to experience like these emotions without any filter, but just to actually be a human. I questioned a lot of what I was supposed to do after that. But in switching over to why that was also the most defining moment in my life, because on that wooden bench, my older brother and I, we promised each other that, we were going to turn something, we were going to do something with our lives. At that point, we realized that things couldn't possibly get any worse. I had a father who was a pastor, and he struggled with his own demons, so to speak. And I had a mother who also, like I mentioned, had debilitating and untreated mental illness. And so the outside perception of my family wasn't very positive. And so I remember my brother and I saying, there's really no other way to go but up. And for me, that became a mental shift in my life, and realizing that I wanted to bring a sense of pride and a sense of belonging to my family name, to my mother, who was often ostracized a lot. And so it also became the most defining moment in my life, and also realizing that in order to level up, and this was just as a 13-year-old, for me, that was the shift to really wanting to do something impactful with myself, but also for my mother and for my family as well.
Man, there's so much there to just reflect on and comment on. I could tell you, this is the first time that I even heard you share this. So I'm just taking this in, getting to, I know you, we have a relationship and a friendship, and we're colleagues. This is big, man. I never heard this story. It makes me think of just so many different elements of who you are. I always say, taken out of context, we all seem strange, in that we're able to really understand each other on a deeper level the more we know our backstories, right? And it's such a powerful backstory. I think for the listeners, of course, you're all hanging on the edge of your seat like I am, wondering kind of what happened next, and we'll let Manu share that. But I think it's really important to highlight too. He said something, and I'm paraphrasing, but in that darkest moment can also be the most defining or profoundly positive moment. But we will never have the perspective. And I just feel like reminding people, as you're listening to this, maybe you're struggling today with something that feels like it's too powerful to overcome. You can't see anything good coming from it. Just as a 13-year-old boy losing his father, with mom in a homeless shelter, with his brother, couldn't see anything good coming from that. But perspective and time creates the ability to look back and say, that was a defining moment in my life. I know that losing my own father at a similar age became, in hindsight, one of the best moments of my life. It was the worst. Sometimes the worst thing can also be the best thing. So I think it's important to let listeners just reflect on that as they hear that. Naturally, everyone wants to know what happened next, man. How did you take that moment of pain and then channel that into what your journey has led you to with football, and of course now with wanting to give back as a therapist?
Yeah, as a flawed human being, there was a series of other mistakes that really I had to experience from a personal level to realize that wasn't the path for me, and that consisted of drug distribution. I was in high school. I had an athletic scholarship to the University of Nebraska, and my senior year in high school, I had a verbal commitment to the University of Nebraska, but this was the very first year that I was away from my older brothers, I didn't have a sense of support, and I was just living with my mother and trying to make ends meet. Fell into the wrong crowd and was just trying to make a quick buck, and started selling some prescription pills on campus. And a few weeks later, I got caught with the prescription pills on me, and
Wow, man.
immediately thinking that I had the next 4 years of my life set for me, having this full ride scholarship. Everything was taken from me, and now I was looking at 4 counts of felony as a 17-year-old.
Wow.
And so, again, trying to make this as quick as possible, but that was also another defining moment in my life, and realizing that what I had for myself, or the perspective that I thought my life was in and down, was completely different than what my faith and what God had designed for me. Because through the little bit of fame that I was receiving from being a highly touted high school recruit, so much of my identity was in football. And so I was praised for the athletic feats and accolades, and I let that get to me, to the point where I thought I could sell some pills on campus and not get caught.
And also too, man, like, I feel like, I know, at least as I'm listening to this, I'm like, who could blame you that you wouldn't have thrown everything into the identity at a young age, and you anchored to that identity, and like, we anchored to what it is that we're good at, especially when we feel chaos around us. Of course you did, man. And then you're young, we all feel invincible and do stupid stuff, man. But still, I'm just blown away that didn't stop you from continuing to become the man that you are today. So there was numerous moments in your life, and I know you're just highlighting some of the biggest, where you faced struggles, and I'm sure depression, anxiety, self-doubt, all those things kind of came with those struggles. How did you push through that one at 18, losing the chance to go to Nebraska? How did you push through that and keep going?
Yeah, I mean, this is where the importance of relying on my social support became imperative for me, because rather than going to play major D1 football, I ended up at a junior college a few hours away from my high school. But the beauty about that was that I was living with my 2 older brothers, so I had that sense of support. I had the direction reintegrated into my life after not having it that year prior. And that was everything for me, because I was also, a part of this diversion program where I was trying to get these 4 felonies expunged from my record. And so I had to do, I had to be a part of this program for 2 years, where I would check in with a probation officer, and I had to pay a monthly fee. But my brothers held me accountable to that, because I think if I would have had to do that on my own, it would have been extremely challenging for that. And so that's how I overcame that. But I'm really getting to like the bulk of it. So fast forward to when I really became intentional about prioritizing my mental health. And that process didn't start for me until I actually was to get my shot in the NFL. And during this time too, Dr. Mondo, this was also when like my emotional insecurities really start to become exposed. Again, I was away from my older brother, who was my college teammate and my roommate. He was my best friend. So I was away from him. My partner at the time, who gratefully is now my wife, I was also away from her too. And so I really grappled with trying to fill that void while pursuing my dream of playing in the National Football League. And it crumbled. I crumbled because I wasn't really sure on how to manage that adjustment process, that transition from, playing mid-major college football to in the big leagues, playing in the NFL. And that led me to question my athletic ability for the very first time in my life. Again, this is a part of me that I was so enmeshed in, and it was crazy that the first time I was questioning that happened to be really in the most pivotal point of my athletic career, where I didn't feel like I had room to actually question that part of me. And it led to a lot of internalized pressure, right? Because when I played football, I was one of the first players from my team to make it to the NFL. And so, you had coaches, you had the outside perspective really supporting you in that sense. But that pressure built up in me that, dang, I now have to live up to the expectations of making it. And so the fear of failure, really, really began to creep in while I was pursuing my dream of the NFL. And so that really negatively impacted my playing ability. I wasn't playing as to the best of my ability. I was questioning myself. I was questioning my intuition, my gut instinct, like all of my football instincts that I was naturally gifted at now became threatened. And that led me to work with the team psychologist at the time by the name of Dr. Denise Johnson. And I name drop her all the time because I met with her for a few sessions, and we might have done some mindfulness work. I think we integrated spirituality. But the thing that stood out the most for me, Dr. Mondo, was that there was a space that was cultivated for me, like no holds barred. There was no filter, like everything was on the table. And I appreciated just the ability to vent, to gain some insight, to gain some knowledge. But for me, the light bulb moment was develop an alternative perspective of my life that wasn't all about this football and everything that came with that. But it was more so like, who are you outside of that? Like, what happens when you don't have the jersey? You don't have, the fans cheering you on, then what? And I was confronted with that during my time. And it is essentially what propelled me to want to pursue the field I'm in now, wanting to become a sports psychologist.
I want to say this before we close here today is, I'm so thankful in my field, our field of therapy. We don't have a ton of BIPOC clinicians. We don't have a ton of brown indigenous people of color, and we don't have a ton of men. We need you, brother. We need you in this field. And I'm so glad that you're joining this field. To go a step further, though, too, you guys probably can imagine when I heard my story, I was like, yo, we need to link up, man. I'm going to tell you right now, he won't probably want me to brag on him like this, but this right here, he's next up. He's next up. And I'm going to make sure that we do everything from a standpoint with Cheat Code. We're partnering, we're putting him through the academy. About to unleash you on this world, man. We got to get you out there, man. You got to be answering the call because you clearly are so gifted in so many ways. And so anyway, this is the beginning of a partnership with you, Manu. And I just wanted everyone to hear your story here today and be blessed by it. I've been blessed by it. And it's about to be go time. So if you didn't know about Manu, and now put some respect on his last name. I'm not going to even say it, because he made an oath on that bench that he was going to put some respect on it. So what's your last name, my friend?
Muasau.
Yeah, put some respect on that. If you don't know his name, you're about to know his name after today, and you'll continue to hear from him. He is a leader in the field. He's an incredible man, just a great friend and colleague that I'm so blessed to know. Thank you so much for sharing your story today on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Dr. Mondo. I know this is going to be the first of many, but appreciate your time, the love and support. It is definitely a mutual for sure.
Where can they find you on IG, man?
So I have Twitter and IG at JAKE_DA_UCE. Jake Dude.
Tap in with him, man. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Level Up with Dr. Mondo. Keep up with us. We'll be back again. Appreciate you guys.
It's time to level up with Dr. Mondo.
Vover.